There's a quiet kind of strength that often goes unnoticed in this fast-moving world. It doesn't shout for attention or rush to be seen. It doesn't climb the loud ladders of success that society worships. And yet, this strength is the foundation of everything we truly need in life. It's not the kind of strength that wins arguments or dominates rooms. It's the kind of strength that allows you to be still in chaos, to be gentle in the face of anger, to see clearly when everything feels uncertain. It is calmness. Many of us spend years chasing success, running toward happiness as if it's always just one step ahead. We exhaust ourselves striving, achieving, collecting, only to find that the deeper we go into that chase, the more we feel something is missing. The more we gain, the more restless we become. And so, what if we've been looking in the wrong direction all along? What if the key to true success, the kind that nourishes your spirit, not just your image, isn't found in more movement, but in stillness? The Buddha taught that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from mastering the mind. Today we will walk through 10 powerful Buddhist lessons that show how inner calm is not weakness. It is wisdom in action. It's how you find clarity when the path ahead is blurred. It's how you make decisions without being a slave to emotion. It's how you build a life that feels spacious, steady, and meaningful. Not one built on speed, but on depth. This isn't about escaping life. It's about engaging with life more deeply, with more presence, more grace, and more awareness. If you're ready to stop running, even just for a moment, and explore the path of mindful living and awakened clarity, then let us begin. Lesson 1. Don't fight the river. Flow with it. In one of the Buddha's most poetic teachings, he compares life to a river, constantly flowing, always changing, never the same for even a moment. Our suffering, he explains, doesn't come from the river itself. It comes from our desperate attempts to resist its flow. We want permanence. We want control. We want things to stay exactly as we planned. But life doesn't work that way. And the harder we cling to our expectations, the more we suffer. This is the nature of dukkha, the first noble truth, that life, when misunderstood, inevitably brings dissatisfaction. The resistance we feel is like trying to swim upstream, exhausting ourselves and getting nowhere. But when we let go, when we surrender our need to control and simply observe the current with awareness, something shifts. We no longer drown in the chaos. We float above it. We don't lose our direction. We discover it anew. Imagine a man who has spent months preparing for a critical job interview. He's rehearsed every answer, visualized success, cleared his calendar, and on the day of the interview, he gets into a traffic jam caused by an accident. He panics, his breathing tightens. He arrives late, flustered, off balance. The opportunity slips away. In that moment, his suffering wasn't caused by the traffic. It was caused by his refusal to accept it. The Buddha would remind us, it is not the event, but our reaction to the event that causes pain. If he had paused, breathed, and recognized that this moment, however unwelcome, is simply part of the river's movement, he might have remained calm, honest, and centered. He might have still arrived late, but with dignity, clarity, and presence. The outer result may not change, but the inner quality of the moment would have been completely transformed. Flowing with life doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means using your energy wisely. It means seeing clearly what is within your control and what is not, and choosing peace instead of panic. In Buddhist practice, this is called equanimity, the unshakable balance of heart that remains steady through gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. Like a tree rooted deeply in the earth, it does not resist the wind. It bends, it sways, but it does not break. So let us remember when life doesn't go as planned. Breathe, feel, acknowledge, and then, instead of resisting the river, allow it to carry you, not blindly, but with awareness. For sometimes, the river knows where you need to go long before you do. Lesson 2. Still the mind before you act. There is a Zen saying that goes, "When the archer misses the mark, he turns and looks within." This single phrase contains an entire world of wisdom. In our daily lives, we are so quick to blame the world when things don't go our way. We lash out, defend ourselves, speak without thinking, act without clarity. But the Buddha taught that a wise person pauses first, not to delay action, but to purify it. In Buddhism, the mind is considered the forerunner of all actions. Before you speak, before you act, before even your breath changes, there is a spark, a thought, a feeling, a movement in the mind. And if that spark is born from anger, fear, or confusion, your actions will reflect that. But if that spark is born from awareness, steadiness, and compassion, your actions will uplift not just yourself, but everyone around you. Imagine you are in a difficult conversation. Someone says something that triggers you, something unfair, hurtful, or dismissive. Your mind races, your heart pounds, your voice rises in your throat. In that moment, you have two paths. One is the habitual reaction: defend, attack, prove them wrong. The other is the mindful response: pause, breathe, observe. That pause is everything. It creates a space between the stimulus and your reaction. And in that space, wisdom has room to arise. It doesn't mean you become silent forever or let others walk over you. It means your response is not born from emotional turbulence, but from clarity. This practice is not just for monks in remote monasteries. It is for you right here, in your relationships, your workplace, your moments of everyday stress. When you feel the urge to act, wait one breath longer. When you feel the urge to speak, take a moment to truly listen. When your emotions feel like a storm, anchor yourself in the present. In Buddhist teachings, this is mindfulness, not as a trendy concept, but as a sacred discipline. When practiced sincerely, it becomes the difference between a life ruled by reaction and a life shaped by intention. Remember, just because a storm rises inside you does not mean you must become the storm. With a calm mind, you do not deny your emotions. You learn to hold them gently, like waves that rise and fall in the ocean of awareness. And when the mind is still, your actions will flow from a deeper place. A place not of fear, but of understanding. Not of ego, but of presence. Lesson 3. Acceptance is the beginning of freedom. One of the most difficult truths in Buddhism is also one of its most liberating. Life is uncertain, unpredictable, and often beyond our control. And yet, it is precisely in accepting this reality that we begin to experience real freedom. The Buddha did not promise a world without pain. He did not say that bad things wouldn't happen. What he taught was something far deeper, that suffering arises not from pain itself, but from our refusal to accept it. We suffer when we insist that things should be different than they are, when we cling to how life should have gone, instead of meeting it exactly as it is. Acceptance, in Buddhist thought, is not resignation. It is not apathy. It is the courageous act of turning toward reality with open eyes and an open heart. It is saying, this too is part of the path. Think about the seasons. You cannot make winter turn to spring by willpower alone. You cannot stop the leaves from falling or the rain from coming. But you can dress for the weather. You can build a fire. You can find beauty in the bare branches. Similarly, in your own life, things will fall apart. People will change. Health will fluctuate. Plans will crumble. But what if, instead of tensing up against every change, you softened? What if you met each moment, not with resistance, but with presence? There's a beautiful story in the Buddhist tradition of a young monk who asks his teacher, "Master, how do we make peace with suffering?" The old monk smiles and replies, "Suffering is not the enemy, it is the teacher. When it knocks, bow to it, listen, and ask what it has come to show you." When we accept the reality of change, of loss, of imperfection, we stop wasting our energy fighting battles we cannot win, and suddenly we discover that we are not powerless. We are free, free to respond with wisdom, free to let go of bitterness, free to move forward with peace. Acceptance is not giving up, it's letting go of the illusion that we were ever fully in control to begin with. And in that letting go, a deeper kind of power arises, the power of trust. Trust in the flow of life. Trust in the strength of your own heart. Trust that even in the midst of uncertainty, there is a path, and you are already on it. Lesson 4. Expect less, act more. We often walk through life carrying invisible ledgers, tallies of what we expect from others, what we believe we're owed, what should have happened by now. We expect kindness from people we love. We expect recognition for our efforts. We expect life to reward our good behavior. And yet the world rarely unfolds according to our internal scorecards. When people disappoint us, when progress is slow, when success seems to land in someone else's lap, we feel frustration, resentment, even despair. Buddhism offers a quiet but powerful shift in perspective. Let go of expectation and return to right action. The fourth noble truth speaks of the eightfold path, and one of its steps is right effort, not right outcome, not guaranteed reward, just the wholehearted, sincere effort that arises from mindfulness and compassion. In other words, act well and release the results. This is not a denial of ambition or responsibility. It is an invitation to live with integrity instead of attachment. When we expect less from others, we stop holding them hostage to our internal stories. We give them space to be who they are, not who we think they should be. And when we expect less from outcomes, we return to the joy of the process itself. Imagine a gardener planting seeds. If she obsesses daily over how quickly the sprouts appear, she'll be constantly anxious, never satisfied. But if she tends the soil, waters the plants, and trusts the seasons, growth will happen quietly, steadily, and in its own time. The same applies to our lives. Let your actions be your offering. Do what is kind, what is wise, what is true. Not because the world owes you something in return, but because it is who you choose to be. When expectation drops away, peace enters, and from that peace, you act with greater clarity, greater strength, and greater freedom. Lesson 5. The sacred space of silence. In a world that never stops talking, silence has become rare and even feared. Yet in the Buddhist path, silence is not emptiness. It is sanctuary. It is presence. It is the space where truth can finally speak. The Buddha often retreated into silence, not because he had nothing to say, but because he understood that silence could hold what words could not. In the stillness of meditation, in the pauses between breaths, in the moments when we choose not to react, there, something sacred opens. And in that quiet, we meet ourselves. Silence allows us to hear not only the world more clearly, but also the patterns of our own mind. We begin to notice how often we speak from fear, from the need to control, to prove, to be right. We begin to see how often we react without listening, defend without understanding, and interrupt the wisdom of the moment with noise. But when we choose silence, when we allow space instead of filling it, we cultivate a different kind of power, the power of restraint, the power of deep listening, the power of discernment. Think of the last time someone truly listened to you without interrupting, without fixing, without judgment, just held space. That kind of silence is not passive, it is profoundly healing. And we can offer it to others and to ourselves. Silence does not mean withdrawal from life. It means stepping into life more fully, but with awareness. It means listening before speaking, observing before judging, breathing before reacting. There's a teaching in the Zen tradition: do not speak unless you can improve upon the silence. What would our lives feel like if we honored that principle? Not with rigidity, but with reverence. In silence, we make room for wisdom. In silence, we allow the heart to soften, the breath to deepen, and the moment to unfold without interference. It is in silence that the seeds of calmness take root, and from that calmness, our truest responses grow, not from habit, but from presence. Lesson 6. Embrace discomfort. Grow through it. We are conditioned to seek comfort, to avoid difficulty, and to numb ourselves from pain. The world around us constantly whispers that happiness lies in ease, in soft cushions, smooth paths, quick solutions. But the Buddha never taught that the path to awakening is comfortable. On the contrary, the path is narrow, uneven, and often confronting. And yet, it is on this very path, through discomfort, that we grow. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha began by pointing directly at suffering. There is dukkha. Life contains stress, pain, and dissatisfaction. But he didn't stop there. He said, it can be understood. It can be transformed. This is where our courage begins. Discomfort is not a punishment. It is a mirror. It shows us where we are still clinging, still resisting, still holding illusions about how things should be. When we turn toward discomfort with mindfulness instead of fear, we discover that pain is not the enemy. Avoidance is. A meditator sitting cross-legged for an hour learns this quickly. At first there is restlessness, then soreness, then mental rebellion. But if they remain still, not out of stubbornness, but out of gentle curiosity, they begin to see through the surface of the sensation. They learn to observe discomfort without collapsing into it, and from that observation, insight arises. This isn't just about sitting in meditation. It's about sitting with life, sitting with a broken heart, a lost opportunity, a difficult conversation, not fleeing, not fixing, just being present. Consider a child learning to walk. Every fall is uncomfortable. Every bruise is a lesson. But would we ever ask the child to avoid walking because it's hard? Of course not. We cheer them on, not because we want them to fall, but because we know that growth lies on the other side of imbalance. The same is true for you. Every moment of discomfort you meet with awareness becomes a step forward. The practice of Buddhism is not to become invulnerable. It is to become deeply human, so human that even pain becomes a doorway to wisdom. So next time discomfort arises, don't run, don't numb it. Sit with it, breathe with it, ask it what it has come to teach you. You may find that within your greatest struggles lie the seeds of your greatest strength. Lesson 7. Cultivate gratitude as a spiritual discipline. Gratitude in the Buddhist tradition is not merely a feeling that arises when things go well. It is a discipline, a deliberate turning of the heart toward what is, instead of what is missing. In a world constantly urging us to seek more success, more status, more security, gratitude asks us to pause and see what is already here. The Buddha once reminded his disciples that even being born as a human being, capable of awareness, reflection, and liberation, is a rare and precious gift. To be alive, to breathe, to hear this teaching is already a blessing beyond measure. And yet, how often do we forget? We fall into the trance of comparison. We measure our worth against others, We focus on lack, not abundance. But the awakened mind sees differently. It sees the beauty in the ordinary, the miracle in the mundane, a cup of warm tea on a cold morning, a kind word from a stranger, the sound of birds outside your window. These moments, simple as they are, can become sacred when met with gratitude. There is a beautiful phrase in the Dhammapada: "Let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little, and if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick, and if we did get sick, at least we didn't die. So let us all be thankful." This is not naive optimism, it is radical wisdom. Gratitude shifts the mind from scarcity to sufficiency, from craving to contentment, and this shift is not just emotional, it is transformational. A grateful heart is less reactive, more patient, and more compassionate. It sees clearly because it is not blinded by desire. In your practice, begin each day with a question: what am I grateful for right now? Not in theory, but in this moment. Your breath, your body, your presence here. Write it down if you like, or simply whisper it in your heart. And at the end of the day, pause again. Look not at what went wrong, but at what supported you, however subtly. Gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about remembering that within this imperfect life, there is still so much to appreciate. And when the heart remembers that, it softens, it opens, and in that opening, peace quietly enters. Lesson 8. Eliminate noise. Return to what matters. The modern world is loud, not only in sound, but in demands, distractions, and endless information. Our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions. Notifications, news, advertisements, conversations. And in the middle of all this noise, we lose touch with the one thing that can never be replaced: our own stillness. The Buddhist path is a return to simplicity, not necessarily a simple life, but a clear one. A life that is guided not by chaos, but by clarity. The Buddha lived in forests, in silence, in mindful community. Not because he rejected the world, but because he understood that without inner silence, we cannot hear truth. The same applies to us. We must protect our focus, not just as a productivity hack, but as a sacred boundary for the mind. What you give your attention to shapes your consciousness. If you feed your mind with anxiety, anger, and noise, you will feel scattered and reactive. But if you cultivate quiet, intention, and mindfulness, your life will begin to align with what matters most. Imagine a still lake. When its surface is undisturbed, it reflects the sky perfectly. But when it is rippled by wind and movement, the reflection is broken. Your mind is that lake. Silence is what keeps it still, and only in stillness can you see yourself clearly. This doesn't mean you must abandon technology or live in a cave. It means asking deeper questions about what you consume, what you say yes to, what you allow into the sacred space of your mind. Spend time in silence each day, even if only for a few minutes. Turn off your devices. Let the world be without you. Listen to the sound of your breath, the rustle of the leaves, the hum of life happening without needing your input. In that space, you will remember what is essential. You will return to your breath, to your body, to your presence. And that return is the beginning of wisdom. As the Zen master said, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. Let silence be your refuge. Let it teach you to see clearly, to act wisely, and to love deeply without needing noise to validate your existence. Lesson 9. Use the breath as an anchor. In Buddhist teachings, the breath is not merely a biological function. It is a sacred gateway to the present moment. The very first meditation the Buddha taught, Anapanasati, literally means mindfulness of breathing. Why the breath? Because it is always here, always available, always honest. It doesn't lie, it doesn't judge, it simply is. And in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control, the breath offers a refuge, a quiet home inside the body, where we can return again and again to find steadiness. Imagine you are in the middle of a tense conversation. Your heart is racing, your mind is swirling with arguments, your muscles are tight. In that moment, you remember your practice. You take a breath, not a shallow one, but a full, intentional inhale. You feel the air expand your lungs. You hold it. You slowly release. One breath, then another. The situation hasn't changed, but you have. You are no longer swept away by emotion. You have returned to the eye of the storm. This is the power of the breath. It grounds us, centers us, and brings clarity in the midst of chaos. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha instructs his followers, breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Such a simple instruction, and yet it holds a profound truth. Awareness begins with presence, and presence begins with breath. You don't need to master complex techniques. Just notice, just feel. When you're anxious, angry, or overwhelmed, pause and return to your breath. Let it anchor you in now. Let it remind you that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not the drama unfolding around you. You are the one who is aware, and that awareness is your liberation. Practice this daily. Let the breath become your companion, your teacher, your anchor. It will never abandon you, and in its rhythm, you may discover a peace that no external achievement can ever provide. Lesson 10: Trust time and trust the process. We live in a culture addicted to speed. Everything is expected instantly. Results, answers, healing, success. And yet, the most meaningful transformations in life never happen overnight. They unfold slowly, subtly, and often invisibly, like seeds germinating underground long before they break the surface. The Buddhist path is not a quick fix. It is a lifetime of returning again and again to awareness, to kindness, to the breath. There are no shortcuts to awakening. There is only the path. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "As the ocean has but one taste, the taste of salt, so too does my teaching have one taste, the taste of liberation." That liberation may come gradually, in the form of small shifts, a softer tone in conflict, a moment of stillness before reacting, a deeper compassion for your own suffering. And those small shifts, when practiced consistently, become the roots of lasting freedom. Imagine a bamboo plant. In its first years, it grows slowly, almost invisibly. But beneath the soil, an intricate network of roots is forming. When the time is right, it grows rapidly, tall and strong. But it could never have reached that height without the unseen work below. Your inner work is the same. When results don't appear immediately, trust the process. Trust that each breath, each act of mindfulness, each moment of letting go is watering the seeds of transformation. Patience is not passivity, it is active faith in the unfolding of things. As the Zen tradition teaches, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This doesn't mean you stop striving or dreaming. It means you stop forcing, you align your effort with right intention, and you allow time to do its part. In a world that celebrates urgency, trusting the slow rhythms of inner growth is a radical act. So do your part. Show up, practice, breathe, and then let go. The path will carry you forward, not because you rush, but because you are rooted. And when you are rooted, even the winds of change cannot uproot your peace. We have traveled through 10 teachings, each one a doorway into a quieter, wiser, and more compassionate life. From flowing with what is, to calming the mind before action, from embracing discomfort, to trusting the slow unfolding of time. And through it all, one thread has remained constant. Calmness is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of clarity. It is the space between impulse and response. It is the deep breath before the next step. The Buddha never promised a life free from hardship, but he offered something far more valuable, a way to meet life with open eyes, steady heart, and awakened mind. Each moment is a chance to begin again. Each breath is an invitation to return. No matter your past, no matter your pain, you can choose presence. You can choose peace. You can choose to walk this path, not with urgency, but with sincerity. So as you go forward, remember this: success is not defined by what the world sees, but by what you carry in your heart. True success is a mind at ease, a heart that loves without clinging, and a life lived in harmony with what is. Let calmness be your compass. Let kindness be your guide. And let the wisdom of this moment, this very breath, be enough for now and always.